Shiltir Summer, about the meat shipments for the Xian. Handle it. Shiltir Summer, the orcs need. Handle it. Shiltir covered her mouth and yawned. Running a transportation network was exhausting work. Her current assignment had her standing out in the middle of an untamed wilderness, without a single comfort of home. At least in the Sorceress Kingdom, she could enjoy the company of the beautiful local maidens in her area. In the Abelian Hills, the closest thing to a beautiful local maiden was a female orc. Or maybe a goblin? Either way, neither tickled her fancy. Why aren't there any cute undead here? Demiurge did everything that he did, after all. Their new world had a distinct shortage of intelligent undead amongst its natives. Cute ones were next to non-existent. The only one that she knew of already belonged to her, so at least she could say that she had a 100% collection rate. Another vampire bride approached, clipboard in hand. She opened her mouth to speak. Handle it, Shiltir told her. The vampire bride shut her mouth. She didn't leave, however, instead staring silently at Shiltir. A furrow formed on Shiltir's brow. What is it, aren't you? It's time for the next cargo delivery, Shiltir Summer. Shiltir closed her parasol and unequipped it. She walked out into a thoroughly trampled meadow where dozens of death knights quietly stood in neat ranks. Rantle again? She asked. The government warehouse, yes. Gate. Shiltir sized the portal for two-way traffic. The vampire bride went over to the death knights, who then formed into a column behind her. She led them into a portal and, shortly after, another set of death knights appeared in the opposite lane. Each set of four bore a cargo container between them, filled with supplies for the local tribes. It had been roughly a month since Iron Summer had subjugated the Abelian Hills. Before the Supreme One returned to the Holy Kingdom, he assigned Albedo to oversee territorial management. For the first time, the Guardian Overseer had an area of her own to manage. To the NPCs, this was touching and all, but Albedo had immediately turned around and roped Shiltir into linking the Abelian Hills to the Sorceress Kingdom's transportation network. One might think that it was as simple as sending frost dragons over to deliver things, but the fact of the matter was that there was nothing to link to. Many of the tribes in the Abelian Hills were at least semi-migratory, some were sedentary, and none of them really interacted with one another except to compete over resources and territory. The closest thing to roads that they had were dirt trails, and most of the rivers dried up by the height of summer. Those that flowed throughout the year were too shallow for cargo vessels. Albedo being Albedo, she couldn't accept her area being in such a backwards state, especially with Cocytus and Shiltir advancing their own domains outside of Nazarick, and sought to bring civilization to the wilderness. A hefty chunk of the Sorceress Kingdom's budget was allocated to the Department of Transportation, and the Department of Transportation was tasked with building a transportation network to link to the rest of the transportation network. The undead performed the lion's share of the work. No, it was more accurate to say that they did all of the work. The local demi-humans, whose livelihoods consisted of hunting, foraging and raiding, did not have the job classes or racial aptitudes for construction and engineering. They were inferior to the undead for menial labor, so Shiltir decided not to waste resources employing them. Phase 1 of the project, which was still ongoing, involved selecting the appropriate trails and widening them to accommodate the roads that would be laid in the future. Those who traveled them would have to settle for dusty paths of packed yellow clay until materials could be secured for the new infrastructure. Shiltir Summer. The vampire bride that had gone through the gate had come back again. Yes? In the vampire bride's pale hand was a neatly folded slip of paper. A message from Albedo Summer. Also, Pandora's actor Summer is waiting for you on the other side. Shiltir opened the letter. Within it was a single line, penned in the economical cursive of the Guardian Overseer. The time has come to deal with Florian Gagné. See to your responsibilities at once. She read the missive thrice over, then closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Is something the matter, Shiltir Summer? That girl must have done something, Shiltir sighed. Girl? Florian, Shiltir said absently as she examined her fingernails. I'm off for the evening to deal with her, aren't you? Make sure this shipment gets to where it needs to go. Yes, Shiltir Summer. The vampire bride bowed as Shiltir turned and entered her gate. The cavernous underground warehouse of Rantle filled her vision on the other side. A long line of death knights with cargo containers awaited their turn to enter the gate. Shiltir Crisp footsteps echoed off of the stone as Pandora's actor made his way over in his mustard yellow uniform. To say that it was difficult to read a doppelganger's expression was an understatement, but Shiltir thought she could sense a hesitant edge to his usual presentation. "Good evening," Shiltir said. "Good evening," Pandora's actor replied. "Has Albedo already contacted you about that matter?" She watched the procession of Death Knights in silence. When the last of them disappeared through the gate, she closed the portal and turned to reply. What did she do? There was a minor outburst, but it was significant enough to convince Albedo to act. She was always the quiet one, too, Shiltir murmured. I never imagined it would happen so quickly. Is that a hint of trepidation that I sense? Shiltir frowned up at Pandora's actor. The doppelganger took a step back, raising his long-fingered hands in a disarming gesture. All I mean to say is that, while we are created to obey the Guardian Overseer, our purpose is to serve the Supreme Beings. While Albedo has done much to facilitate change in our Master's realm, you were the spark for much of that change. Is that so, aren't you? Shiltir raised an eyebrow. I seem to recall a certain someone meddling in everything behind the scenes. He still is, in fact. I may have played some small part, Pandora's actor chuckled, but I would have never been able to play yours. Your results in the Sorceress Kingdom have mostly been obtained through your unique form of management and the work of your vassals. Even Ainsummer has recognized your efforts, and only Ainsummer could have foreseen that you'd come so far. In the end, I believe the final call belongs to you. The three great minds of Nazarick all agree that this would eventually happen, and they all agreed that this is the correct choice. Who am I to say otherwise? Besides, she smiled slightly, it isn't as if I disagree, I'll be enjoying this very much. Her smile grew. Pandora's actor raised a hand to his vacuous mouth and cleared his throat. Before I forget, I should hand over these items. I believe you already know what to do with them. Anyway, how is your work coming along with the Ainsummer Highway of Love? Shiltir's lip curled. I can't believe you can say that with a straight face. Did I? Pandora's actor tilted his egg-like head. Well, the Guardian Overseer's enthusiasm aside, I can't imagine that the name will stay for long. I can only imagine that it's a sign of things to come. Shiltir crossed her arms and gestured with a hand. Did you know that she took the budget for the cancelled statues and pocketed them for her projects in the Abelian Hills? Of course I know, Pandora's actor replied. I'm the royal treasurer, after all. Also, it was an official reallocation of the budget, so saying it was pocketed is incorrect. We're all grateful that Ainsummer offered his foresight on the matter. He did? Oh yes, the doppelganger nodded. He mentioned that he noted a number of flaws with the statue proposal. We all agree that this was one of them. While having statues of our master dominating the skyline would be marvelous, investing in infrastructure is far better for the long term. No? Her mind raced, trying to recall what her vassals mentioned about infrastructure investment. It is? Of course it is. If we invest now, we can have many more statues of Ainsummer in the future, aren't you? Now, if you'll excuse me, I must attend to my duties in the treasury. Pandora's actor tipped his cap before spinning on his heel, vanishing partway with his coat swirling about his figure. Shiltir left the warehouse, walking out into the brisk evening air of spring. The illumination of the central district washed away the gloom of twilight, and pedestrians from various households cast a myriad of shadows onto the cobbled streets. She looked around and up at the clear skies before launching herself over the southern walls with a flap of her wings. A casual flight saw her crossing over Corlin Harbour 5 minutes later. She descended in lazy circles over Castle Corlin before alighting on the rooftop garden of the palace. A pleasant smile crossed her face as she gazed upon the elegant, pure white structure that was her new court. It's much larger than I thought it would be. Well, the more, the merrier. She took a deep breath. Could she smell them? She thought she could. Her new court was also her harem away from home, a garden of the finest flowers she could gather. Shiltir licked her lips as she thought of the pure maidens within. They should be waiting inside. Whom shall I taste first? Maybe I should start with Ludmilla, the reliable mainstay is always good. Or maybe Clara? It's her place, after all. I could have Clara and make Ludmilla watch, or maybe I should enjoy them both at once? Or all 4 of them. No, I should have Florine before. Shiltir raised a sleeve to wipe her mouth. Oi? Gyah! She leapt into the air, equipping her pipette lance as she spun around in shock. What in the world are you doing? Aura looked up at her with a frown. Shorty? Shilter peered down at the dark elf. That should be my line, aren't you? Where did you even come from? I didn't see anyone on the roof just now. Aura gestured with her thumb towards the garden. There, Mare was taking potted plants out of his inventory and setting them down on the bare soil. One of the potted trees that he used to teleport around with was sitting nearby. Mare wanted to get some plants started here. We came out of the tree and you were standing there with an indecent look on your face. What's wrong with looking like that in front of my heart? I mean, there was nothing wrong with my face. Well, Aura placed a hand on her hip. If you're here to see those vassals of yours, make sure you tell them about that thing. Thing? You know. That. Ah, that. Of course I'm going to tell them. I've purposely timed it, you know. The Dark Elf Ranger cast a dubious look at her before sighing with a shrug. Well, whatever. She turned to call out into the empty garden. Oi, Mare, come with us for a minute. See coming. Florine lowered herself onto the comfy chaise at her desk, pressing a hand into the luxurious material of the seat. She leaned against the backrest and stretched herself out along its length, closing her eyes with a smile. This is so nice. I could curl up and write here forever. I hope we'll get to use this place more often. Are you sure you wanna do that? Leanne asked. Do what? Lie down like that. Lady Shall. Mistress Shiltier, Ludmilla corrected Leanne from across the court. Might jump on ya. Florine frowned over at Leanne. She wouldn't do that. Right, Ludmilla? It would depend on her mood, Ludmilla replied. Plus some other things. You're safe, though. Florine tilted her head back over the backrest, raising her arms past her head to stretch again. She let out a contented sigh. It really was a wonderful chaise. What things? Leanne asked. You know, Ludmilla answered. Things. You get it, right, Florine? I don't, Leanne said. You two are really. Wait, how do you think we're doing in the Draconic Kingdom, Ludmilla? Given the circumstances, Ludmilla replied, much better than expected. Queen Auriculus is an extraordinary sovereign. Yeah? Why's that? She's very progressive, no, adaptive. You can tell that she's well accustomed to managing things in a crisis. It only took a few days before she started making moves to restructure the framework of the Draconic Kingdom to accommodate its new relationship with us. Leanne and Clara stared at Ludmilla. Leanne flopped down onto her chaise with a disgusted sound. You know what? Leanne pressed her cheek against the cushions. I hate you. Both you and Florine. Not forever, mind you, just for the next little while. You might not want to lie down like that, Leanne, Ludmilla said. Our mistress might jump on you. Leanne shot upright. Why am I in danger but Florine's safe? Because I imagine that your reaction would be very satisfying. I don't get it. It's quite simple, Ludmilla said. It is, Florine agreed. It's not, Leanne shouted. Maybe you two monsters can feel out an answer for everything, but us mere mortals can't. How does this work? What are these things you're talking about? Ludmilla's dark-eyed gaze drifted over Leanne's resting form. Flavor, I suppose? Each of us has a theme. Our mistress will partake of us whenever she fancies that flavor. Oh yeah? Then what flavor am I? What's she gonna do to me? You'll find out soon enough, Ludmilla replied. That doesn't help with my anxiety here. I know, Ludmilla smiled slightly. I hate you. You already told me that, Ludmilla said. You'll find the Mistress Shiltir is very particular when it comes to this. You could say that it's a sense of propriety in itself. Something about living her father's dreams to their fullest. Her father? Leanne said. How does her father factor into this? Well, His Majesty did say something about Mistress Shiltir being very much her father's daughter. At any rate, I have no idea what you've all been imagining, but I assure you that it probably isn't as terrible as you think. Well, except for Leanne. Why, you're doing that on purpose, aren't you? Perhaps, Ludmilla replied, but it doesn't change anything. You are what you are and what happens will be what happens. Leanne fidgeted behind her desk and squirmed in her seat. Ludmilla had a sadistic side to her that she relished, but it always came out in her characteristic deadpan. In that case, Leanne asked, what does La Mistress Shiltir do with you? Ludmilla looked down at her desk and focused on her paperwork. Hey, answer me. Florine fussed with the loose silks of her outfit. Both going by their treatment so far and by what Ludmilla had shared with them over the past few months, life as one of Lady Shiltir's concubines was a far kinder fate than the one that awaited Florine in the past. She was raised in a loving household, but the fact was that daughters of noble houses were tools at best and toys at worst. Minor houses were especially powerless and possessing beauty was often a curse. Florine was more than aware of her own appearance and constantly feared that she would catch the eye of a high noble 3 times her age or more. He would suggest to her father that she come work as a maid in his household and she would then be subjected to all sorts of terrible things. To avoid this, her father sought to arrange a marriage as quickly as possible, but he wasn't satisfied that the houses under consideration were worthy of his precious daughter. If he made a poor decision, things could end just as badly. Even if he managed to find a suitable match, all it took was for a high noble to pressure her new house to give her up. The best-case scenario was that she would be able to seal an advantageous alliance for her house, bear 3 or 4 children and quietly live out the rest of her days in her husband's shadow. Unless her husband died, but she would never wish for that upon anyone. Under Lady Shiltir, Florine was genuinely recognized as a ruler in her own right and enjoyed an unprecedented degree of independence. She was valued for her contributions and she doubted that Lady Shiltir would ever let her go. Since Lady Shiltir was a woman, Florine wouldn't have pregnancy after pregnancy forced upon her. Working in a court filled with friends was wonderful, as well. Politically speaking, she and Leanne had latched onto the then newly promoted Countess Corlem for the traditional reasons that minor nobles courted high nobles. What they quickly found out, however, was that they no longer needed to band together for improved domestic security or protection against the machinations of other factions. The might of their sovereign and austerity of His Majesty's administration made bandits, organized crime and foreign incursion a thing of the past. Destructive politicking was not tolerated. Another thing that they found out was that the realities of the Sorceress Kingdom raised the power of the nobility to levels that none could imagine previously. Life as a noble was no longer a struggle between balancing costs for security, maintaining delicate trade balances and trying to maximize the output of their land and its tenants in an effort to facilitate a little bit of development. Security was cheap and effective, surplus revenues abounded and development was simply a matter of resource allocation. Intelligent, talented management came to the fore, no longer suffocated by the circumstances of the past. Their little group had been gobbled up by Lady Shiltir and involved in dozens of different initiatives. They brought communities together, planned infrastructure, created new procedures for governance, organized the transportation network and helped to train the vampire brides. Industries and technology were developed and expanded to support their efforts. Now, their gaze turned outwards, laying the groundwork to expand the Sorceress Kingdom's cultural, economic and political sphere of influence. Also, though it might have only been Florine who thought this, their faction was a fortress that gave them the confidence to conduct their dealings. Not only were they young and inexperienced, but they also resided in a region where patriarchal cultures dominated almost every aspect of society. Even imperial princesses like Frianne Gushmund were subjected to traditional biases and chained to its expectations. Lady Shiltir gave them a base that they could safely sortie from and retreat to. Having a group of friends to rely on and support was something of immeasurable value. In all, the benefits of the arrangement far outweighed the detriments, and those detriments couldn't even be considered detriments by nobles in the first place. Despite their liege being a vampire, Florine felt that they were all safe under Lady Shiltir. She wouldn't mind if their arrangement stayed as it was forever. The doors to the court opened, revealing 2 vampire brides. Behind them came Lady Shiltir, accompanied by Lady Aura and Lord Mayor. Clara, Ludmilla, Leanne and Florine rose to their feet, bowing from behind their desks. "Welcome back, Mistress Shiltir," they said in unison. "I'm back." A huge smile filled Lady Shiltir's face in response to their greeting. Lady Aura made an expression of her own. "Gay, did you order them to do that?" "It's etiquette," Lady Shiltir replied. "Etiquette? They're the finest noble women I could get my hands on, so of course they'd have the class to match." Lady Aura's expression remained unchanged. "I dunno, I haven't heard any of the other nobles refer to anyone as mistress." "My nobles are special. It's a privilege that only they can have. The trio made their way across the court. When she reached the base of her dais, Lady Shaltir hopped up and settled into her throne-like armchair. She placed her elbows on the armrests of vermilion velvet and leaned forward, her crimson gaze going from Ludmilla and Clara's side to Leanne and Florine's. "Oh, it looks like you two are really into it," Lady Shaltir said. "You're wearing harem pants and everything." Harem pants? Leanne swallowed. "They're part of the traditional fashion in the Draconic Kingdom, Mistress Shaltir," Florine said. "The people there all wear similar outfits." Lady Shaltir's hand went to her chin in a thoughtful gesture. Does that mean the Draconic Kingdom is one giant harem? I like this queen already. We could use more culture like this." "Oi, Shaltir." Lady Shaltir frowned down at Lady Aura's interruption. "Could the children please remain silent while the adults are speaking? Hey. Who said you could jump up here?" "I didn't like the way you were looking down at me," Lady Aura told Lady Shaltir. "How rude. Let me have my moment. Can't you appreciate my achievement?" The two cousins glared at one another on the dais. Below, Lord Mayor was holding up his hands towards them, making an awawa sound. Eventually, Lady Shaltir and Lady Aura broke eye contact, turning their heads away with a humph. Several moments later, Lady Shaltir sighed and turned her attention back to them. "As much as I would love to say that I've come for pleasure," she said, "we have some pressing matters of business to attend to. You have your work in the Draconic Kingdom awaiting you as well, so I shan't interfere with your duties." Lady Shaltir rose to her feet, clasping her hands in front of her. A solemn look accompanied her equally solemn tone. "First of all, I have some news to share with you. With a heavy heart, I must inform you that Ainzul Gaon, the Sorcerer King, has an audible swallow issued from their liege's throat. Has died." The last part was barely a whisper. A deafening silence followed and they all stared at Lady Shaltir. "But how?" Florine asked. "Where did this happen?" "If His Majesty had fought a life-and-death battle, everyone would surely have noticed." "Far to the west," Lady Shaltir replied, "in the Holy Kingdom of Roblé. His Majesty fought valiantly, but Mayor? Where are you going?" "I'm going to sink Roblé into the ocean." Ludmilla hopped onto the floor below. Please take me with you, Lord Mayor." Clara rose from her seat, lifting her long skirts as she took the stairs down. "Me too, my lord." Clara and Ludmilla fell into step with Lord Mayor. Aura jumped off of Shaltir's dais, landing behind her brother and snatching his wrist. "Mayor, wait. Shaltir, catch your vassals, they've gone berserk." Mass hold species. A magic circle appeared beneath Clara and Ludmilla. Clara froze in place, but Ludmilla kept going. Shaltir clicked her tongue. "TCH, she has a freedom effect." "But that means..." Aura struggled to hold Mayor still. If it's come to this." Ludmilla spun on her heel. Her glaive appeared in her hand. Whoa! Lady Aura somehow managed to bend her body, and Lord Mayor's, between all three petals of Ludmilla's blossoming iris. The dark elf twins stared at Ludmilla with wide eyes. Ludmilla was plainly shocked. The glaive vanished from her hand. Did you use a taunt on me, Lady Aura?" It was a misdirection skill. Have you all finally snapped out of it?" Mayor?" "Yue." Huge tears fell from Lord Mayor's eyes. Clara and Ludmilla started sobbing with him. Together, the trio collapsed onto the polished limestone floor, crying into one another's arms. "Great," Leanne said, "you broke them." Lady Shaltir spluttered for a moment before she could work up a reply. I didn't know that was going to happen," she said. "Why didn't you two react the same way?" "More like why did they react like that?" Leanne frowned. Ludmilla's an unshakable mountain most of the time, but she fell apart just like that. She's died like 7 times, right? If His Majesty, or anyone else, for that matter, dies, we can just resurrect them. Actually, there was an argument between Albedo and Demiurge about that. There was? Don't worry about it, Lady Shaltir sighed. I was so proud of my timing for this. I calculated everything out too. Leanne exchanged a look with Florine. She then looked to Lady Aura, who shrugged unknowingly. What do you mean by calculated, my la mistress? Leanne asked. Well, Lady Sheltier retrieved a notebook and flipped it open. This happened about a month ago. It takes overland merchant traffic about a month to go from Robley to Erantle through Riestais if they don't stop anywhere, so I delivered the news just before they'd arrive with the information. That way you would be ready to manage the reaction of your subjects when the rumor finally spreads here. But I heard the paladins that came here while we were away said that Robley lost the wall and got their northern half occupied. They did, their liege nodded. But, after his death, Lord Ines liberated the Abelian Hills and came back to defeat Demon Emperor Yaldabaoth and save the Holy Kingdom. That's wonderful. Florine smiled. Doesn't that mean the Sorceress Kingdom has new friends? It does. Lady Sheltier returned her smile and nodded. But wait, Leanne furrowed her brow. Doesn't that mean the people in the Holy Kingdom know that His Majesty isn't dead? That's right. Then that means news of the Sorcerer King's death would have never spread from the Holy Kingdom. By the time their lands were liberated and merchant traffic could flow again, they'd already know that the Sorcerer King was alive and well. Lady Sheltier tilted her head with a confused look. Lady Aura snorted. Muoron. Shut up. Still, Florine smiled. I'm impressed. Our mistress accurately calculated the average time it would take for travelers to go from Robley to Erantle. She even accounted for the weather. She's made so much progress since back then. Lady Sheltier came over, wrapping her arms around Florine to hug her close. Ah, such a good vassal. She rested her cheek against Florine's breast. Speaking of which, I have some business with Florine. Aura, Mayor wanted to do something in the garden, yes? Take him and the others with you. Can I stay too? Leanne asked. Sure. Come on, you crybabies, Lady Aura said, let's go. The door whispered shut behind Lady Aura and the others. Lady Sheltier didn't release Florine, instead drawing her down back onto the chaise with her. The vampire wrapped her arm around Florine's waist. Leanne watched them from her seat with a nervous expression. I heard about what happened today, Lady Sheltier said. I'm sorry, mistress. Florine looked down at her lap. I lost my composure and dishonored you in the royal court. You're sorry you lost your composure, but you're not sorry you said what you did? Florine swallowed, remembering her exchange with the Prime Minister. No, mistress, I'm not sorry for what I said. Several seconds passed in perfect silence. I see, Lady Sheltier said. In that case, I must deliver your punishment. Wait a minute. Leanne shot to her feet. Silence. The vampire's crimson gaze flared as she leveled a glare at Leanne. Or would you perhaps like to add to her suffering? Leanne sat back down. Her nails dug into the backrest of her chaise. Good. Lady Sheltier turned her attention back to Florine. Now, hold out your arm. Florine started to tremble. The arm around her waist pulled her closer. I'm waiting. The vampire smiled. Squeezing her eyes shut, Florine stuck out her right arm. The point of something cold traced up her wrist and pressed into her palm. It has come to my attention, Lady Sheltier said, that there are a great number of lickspittles out there. Those who lower their heads out of fear or greed, who break from torment or cower at the sight of monsters. Florine winced as the object pressed painfully into her palm. While they may entertain for a time, Lady Sheltier said, the fact of the matter is that they are expendable tools at best. They are not what I need. Those with beauty are nothing special, talent and intelligence are not rare. But you, Florine, well, I suppose you're worth keeping around. Florine's arm shifted as the pressure receded. A weighty object remained in her hand. She opened her eyes. In her palm rested a dark box. Layers of strange patterns were etched into each of its faces. Occasionally, glints of light traced through those patterns, but they gave no hint as to what they represented. She turned her head to look at Lady Sheltier. Her liege smiled warmly in response. Congratulations, Florine Cadia Dale Gonye. Eternal service awaits. You may join the others, Florine, Sheltier said. Leanne, remain here with me. Florine rose from where she was sitting beside Sheltier, putting away the dark box. Sheltier watched as the voluptuous young noblewoman made her way out of the chamber. As usual, she walked in her reserved fashion, keeping her hips from swaying and gliding over the floor so her ample curves didn't bounce as she moved. I'm going to have to fix that. There was much work to be done to fashion Florine into her ideal. Before that, However, the first steps needed to be made. Shiltir waited until Florine left the court before rising and walking over to Lian's desk. "Does that make you happy?" Shiltir asked. "Of course, mistress," Lian answered. "Ludmilla mentioned that it might happen someday, but I guess that didn't really sink in until just now. It can still fail." The young noblewoman froze. Shiltir smirked. "Well, not so much fail as she may not be able to open that box. All race change items have conditions to activate." "But you didn't tell her what they were." "That's right, aren't you?" Shiltir said. "I didn't. But I will tell you. After evaluating her performance over the last year, it was decided that Florine Garnier was eminently qualified to serve Nazarick for all eternity. She had many qualities that the Sorceress Kingdom needed. Combined with her capabilities, personality and the job classes only available to natives of their new world, she offered a wide variety of benefits that could not be adequately replicated by any of the NPCs. All this had been discerned by Iron Summer, who had declared that she should be rewarded nearly a year ago. Though her fate had been decided, what form that fate might take led to divided opinions. There were some obvious choices, but Pandora's actor complained that they were boring. Shiltir proposed that, since Florine was her vassal, she should become something that Peroncino Summer would have fancied. Demiurge suggested that they experiment with the karma values of the natives, turning good to evil or evil to good. Shiltir was adamantly against that, as it would ruin her careful grooming and all of the things that she looked forward to doing with Florine Garnier. It was then that Pandora's actor proposed another experiment, one that would challenge the precedents of Yggdrasil and explore what was possible in their new world. "What does she need to do?" Lian asked. "Once the box is primed," Shiltir answered, "she needs to claim 10 souls, aren't you?" Lian's mouth fell open. She can't do that. She won't do that." "Then I suppose that's as far as she goes," Shiltir told her. "Or, you could lend her a hand." Her vassal's response was immediate. 10 souls, is it? Innocent ones, preferably." Lian rose to her feet. "I'll do it," she clenched her fists at her sides. "I mean, I'll figure something out. 10 souls is a small price to pay for immortality." Ludmilla dabbed at her cheek with a handkerchief, wiping away another trickle of unbidden tears. Beside her, Clara let out a quiet sob. Ludmilla reached out to place an arm over Clara's shoulder, hugging her to herself. Lady Aura stood several meters away, eyeing them with a frown. "I know this might sound weird coming from me," she said, "but should you really be that upset over hearing that Lord Ines died? Wouldn't you be upset if you heard that His Majesty left us?" Ludmilla asked. She never knew that she could be so distraught. Their god had finally returned to them, then they were told that he was dead less than a year after. They didn't even know it had happened. Someone had to tell them that he had died in some place far beyond their reach. This is what they must have felt when the grave sin happened 500 years ago. When the words left Lady Shiltir's mouth, Ludmilla felt like she would turn to dust right then and there. It was beyond the loss of friends and loved ones. There was so much directionless grief, rage and remorse that she had jumped at the first chance to act upon her feelings by joining Lord Mayor in his attempt to sink Roblé into the sea. "Of course I would," Lady Aura answered. "I'd be sadder than you. But, the other people we informed didn't cry like you two did. They just didn't believe it. Some of them thought it was a joke and laughed." "How can something like that be a joke?" Clara looked up from Ludmilla's breast with a glare. "I know, right?" Lady Aura scowled and raised a fist. "The world is just full of terrible people who don't know how wonderful Lord Ines is." A brisk wind blew over the rooftop garden of Clara's palace. Clara shivered and activated her Endure Elements brooch. Ludmilla shared a look with Clara and she nodded, drawing away from Ludmilla rearranging her shawl. "Lady Aura," Ludmilla said, "what actually happened with His Majesty and Roblé?" I wasn't there but, basically, some people came to Eranthal to ask for help and Lord Ines went back with them. They fought a whole lot of demi-humans and eventually Yaldabaoth showed up." "Who is Yaldabaoth?" Lady Aura's hands went out, tracing a less than vague outline in the air. "Like this, maybe? A big fiery demon." There were many demons described in legends, but few were big and fiery. Broadly speaking, demon was a term used to describe a notable being who used their powers to perform evil acts and bring ruin upon the people. The demon gods of 2 centuries previous were examples of such beings that were powerful enough to be categorized as gods, and they had come in many forms. As far as actual demons went, it was said that one of the 13 heroes was a half-demon. The only other true demons she knew of were Prime Minister Albedo, and I think I encountered something like that last summer in the upper reaches. Did you read the reports on it, my lady? I referred to it as the evil star, but that may have only been something the demi-humans came up with. Just saying, but a lot of demons look the same as one another. I think the reports about what happened back then mentioned that there were plenty. That much was true. There had been at least 6 different types of demons in the battle at the end of her campaign in the upper reaches. The members of each type were indistinguishable from one another. So what happened when Yaldabaoth showed up? They fought, Lady Aura said. Yaldabaoth and his minions against Lord Ines. After Lord Ines got rid of all the minions, he fought Yaldabaoth in a magnificent aerial duel. A twinge of envy rose within her. She wished she could have seen it. His Majesty must have been spectacular. But then, Lady Aura said mournfully, Lord Ines fell into the Abelian Hills. Oh no, Clara gasped, but that would mean Yaldabaoth was free to do as he pleased. Ludmilla couldn't even imagine what a being capable of fighting against the Sorcerer King could do to a human nation. She wondered how many had survived Yaldabaoth's wrath. Luckily for them, Lady Aura continued, Lord Ines hurt Yaldabaoth so much that he was forced to retreat. While Yaldabaoth was recovering, Lord Ines liberated the tribes of the Abelian Hills. After that, he returned to the Holy Kingdom and defeated Yaldabaoth in another amazing battle, this time, one-on-one. Oh! Clara and Lord Mayor clapped their hands with bright smiles. Despite already knowing the ending, Ludmilla felt a sigh of relief leave her. My lady, she said, for our peace of mind, could you tell us where His Majesty is now? On a carriage coming back from Robley, Lady Aura replied. They left around the beginning of spring using the same route that they came on. The carriage is going really slow though. Lord Ines must be using the time to think about something big and important. With the story at its end, Clara followed Lord Mayor to see what he had brought for the rooftop garden. Ludmilla stayed behind with Lady Aura. While she was glad that the Sorcerer King was safe and sound, other thoughts plagued her mind. That evil star was probably Yaldabaoth. The likelihood of 2 insanely powerful demons existing in the Abelian wilderness simultaneously is next to none. She was nearly helpless against the powerful fiend, but attacks from the Runebow Ultra managed to drive it away. If she had been stronger, maybe the injuries that she inflicted upon Yaldabaoth could have influenced the battle in the Holy Kingdom more in the Sorcerer King's favor, reducing the risk to His Majesty. It was 3 times now that she resorted to using a bow against powerful foes. First Yaldabaoth, then Sigurd, then the Viridian Dragon Lord. In all 3 instances, what she could do felt woefully inadequate. What's wrong? Lady Aura asked. I was just thinking that I should improve my ranged combat capabilities, Ludmilla answered. Every time I get into a fight where I must resort to archery, I feel impotent. Even with this campaign in the Draconic Kingdom, I spend nearly all of my time flying back and forth managing the front lines as a captain rather than fighting directly on it. Our overall strategy there means that I won't be participating directly most of the time, but, in the future, I can think of plenty of scenarios where a bow would come in handy in similar situations. Lady Aura crossed her arms, pursing her lips in thought. Would that mess up your build? Well, you're some weird noble commander ranger. Since people get their levels first and develop skills and abilities later, you probably have plenty of stuff you could be doing already that you haven't really looked at. How strong are you as a ranger? I'm not sure, my lady, Ludmilla replied. Ever since I changed, I found that I've lost a few things and gained some others. I'm so much stronger than before that I don't think I should ask for more than what I have. Maybe being a death maid is just fine. No, that's wrong. Lady Aura said, Mayor and I still do plenty to see if we can be better at all sorts of things and you're nowhere near as strong as we are. Anyone serving Lord Ines has to do their best. I'm sorry, my lady. You're right. I mean, I still try to improve in certain areas, but I suppose I'm entirely lost when it comes to others. I guess I could see that. Lady Aura crossed her arms and put on a thoughtful look. Heteromorph levels give tons of stuff and the people around here can come up with the most random things. Since you mentioned your death maid ability, Maybe you should work with that? Undead racial levels have all sorts of negative energy-related skills and abilities. Well, I did figure out how to modify one of my martial arts to deliver negative energy damage recently. Martial arts are their own thing, though. Have you talked with Shiltir or the undead that you work with? Lady Shiltir's racial skills and abilities are very vampire. They're everything one would think that a vampire should possess. I believe a large part of my problems is that I don't have any examples of what I am to work with. Innovation was a difficult thing. Innovating what was supposed to be natural was next to unfathomable. Shiltir has Lord Peroncino's encyclopedia, doesn't she? There should be something in there. I asked about it once and she told me that I couldn't look at the entry. Lady Aura's look turned disparaging. Probably because she wrote something super pervy in it and doesn't want you to see. The terrain of the rooftop shifted around as Lord Mayor discussed landscaping options with Clara. So far, they seem to have settled on a central pool with a set of small falls that flowed into it from the north. A lot of undead have negative energy attacks, Lady Aura said. That seems useful. You could imbue your arrows with negative energy and do all sorts of stuff with them. Like ability damage, curses or energy drains. I heard your weapon has ability damage too. If you learn how to perform that stuff as an ability, it would free up capacity on your weapon for other things. That seems as good a place to start as any. I thought you were going to suggest the negative energy bomb again. Oh, speaking of weapons. Ludmilla reached into the infinite haversack on her right hip, withdrawing the dragon horn from the Viridian Dragon Lord. Even with its slight curve, it was as tall as she was. You mentioned that I could make a bow with this, but no one I spoke to has any clue what to do with it. The reaction to seeing it was generally shock. First over the fact that she was carrying an ancient green dragon horn around, followed by the assumption that she had somehow killed an ancient green dragon. Smith Kovalev had even asked if he could see some scales. You're supposed to make a composite bow with it, Lady Aura said. But the region is very humid, my lady. Composite bows won't last. The rangers from the Adventurer Guild always say the same thing, but, once you enchant the bow, it'll be no problem, right? Longbows are big and annoying to use. If you have a composite bow, you'll have the same power in a smaller bow. A smaller bow will let you loose arrows on the run and it's easier to use on a mount. She nodded in agreement with Lady Aura's assertions. After fighting with a longbow for so long, she was becoming keenly aware of its limitations. As one grew in strength, agility and endurance, it became more and more viable to fight with a bow while running. The problem was that a longbow was as tall as the wielder, making it cumbersome to handle. When she fought on the run, she always used a short bow, but those were lacking in power. If enchanting a composite bow solved the problems that came with humidity, then it became an obvious choice. Going by what she understood, the damage to the bow would reduce its durability as a magic item, but the bow's performance wouldn't be affected until that durability ran out. One could use advanced mending spells to restore the bow to full durability again. What else do I need for a composite bow? Ludmilla asked. Horn, you have it already, sinew, wood, glue, string? Don't just get any old materials, either, it'd be a waste of the horn. I'm afraid I'm not strong enough to defeat beings as strong as the Viridian Dragon Lord. You have Ilishnish, don't you? I will not turn Ilishnish into glue, my lady. That's not what I meant. You can work together, right? Go on a hunting trip or something. I want to do that one day. There are so many beasts that I've never seen before here. Ludmilla wondered when she would have the time for that. Her time was split between domestic duties, army duties and tasks for the transportation network. Unless her duties somehow had her come across rare and powerful creatures, well, that was how she ended up with the dragon horn. What about the Lord-class creatures with hunting ranges around 1,000 square kilometers? 1,000 square kilometers, like Hamsuk? That's too weak. It's a good way to measure things out, though. I'd say a single creature with a hunting range of 4,000 square kilometers or more would work. That would be a creature about as strong as Ilishnish. Still, Ludmilla didn't feel right about using her companion for her personal ends. Shouldn't you be excited? Lady Aura asked. You're a ranger, right? I'm not sure if I should be excited about hunting such powerful quarry. But that's why it's so great. Fighting to get stronger. Training your pet. Finally bagging your quarry. In the end, You get a shiny prize that's way better than what you had. It's like an epic quest. Stories of epic quests never really excited her, but the idea of bettering herself was attractive. I'll have to keep an eye out for opportunities, my lady. Ludmilla lowered her head. Thank you for your advice. Sure thing. They went to join Lord Mayor and Clara in the garden, which had been rearranged at least 3 times while Ludmilla spoke with Lady Aura. Ludmilla examined the line of plants to the side, like the ones Lord Mayor had left with Glazer. She had never seen any of them before. A quarter of the plants were stored in jars and submerged in water. Lord Mayor, Ludmilla said. You didn't give the lizardman in Warden's Vale any of these plants, did you? No. Though he seemed well-meaning, Ludmilla worried over introducing plants that were potentially harmful to the local environment. Lord Mayor assured her that the plants with Glazer could only grow around divine ash, but she wasn't sure what else he was spreading around. What do these plants require? Shaltir said that she wanted a pool here, so I brought some tropical plants. They'll thrive in the microclimate created by the hot water, but, if they somehow manage to get off of the roof, they'll die from the cold. Lord Mayor says that they'll grow thick enough to block people from seeing the pool itself, Clara said. People flying by won't be able to see us here. That's very thoughtful of you, my lord, Ludmilla said. I assume they are being grown for other purposes, as well? Lord Mayor nodded. Most of them are for crafting materials or food. A few of them have a bit of intelligence, but there aren't any carnivorous ones. Clara moved away from the line of plants to stand behind Ludmilla's shoulder. There isn't anything like that ghost tongue at Ludmilla's place, is there? Clara asked. Sorry, that only grows around divine ash. I can bring a divine ash cutting here to see if I can raise the same ecology around it, but the only one that seems to be doing well is in Warden's Vale. Ah, that's fine, my lord, Clara laughed nervously. I'm sure we'll manage without them. The door to Lady Shaltir's court opened and Florian appeared. The young noblewoman didn't appear to be all there, her steps slowly skimming over the stone as she came forward to join them. Are you all right, Florian? Ludmilla asked. Oh, yes. Lady Shaltir gave me a lot to think about. Whatever it was, she seemed reluctant to share. Well, Ludmilla said, if you'd like to talk about it, just let me know. Florian put on a half-smile in response. She turned her attention to the reshaped garden. Have you settled on a layout, Clara? I think the general feel here is good, Clara replied. I'm a bit worried about whether this pool will leak into the palace. As long as the basin stays unworked, Lord Mayor said, I can mend any leaks. Anyway, the hot water starts up here and flows down this cascade into the main pool. Then the pool feeds this stream that connects to the other pools in the garden. I'm not sure where you want the water to end up. How much water will flow through here? It would be the rain that this roof catches plus what the magic item makes. I'm actually a bit worried about that. About the rain, my lord, or the magic item? The magic item, Lord Mayor replied. You said that these magic items are commonly used by cities and towns, right? Yes, that's right, Clara nodded. They're used to supplement urban water supplies. Do you think they use them all over the world? The rest of the world is supposed to be more advanced than this region, so it would stand to reason that they do. Then, where does it all go? What do you mean by that, my lord? If water is being conjured for all those places, it flows somewhere. Into the sewers and the ground. Into the lakes and rivers. Then into the seas and oceans. Then it evaporates and becomes rain, but it stays in the world, right? Doesn't that mean you're slowly flooding the world with items that create water? Could that happen? Ludmilla didn't even know how big the world was, never mind how much water was needed to flood everything. That's a good question, Clara said. Does that mean we should add something that destroys water at the end of this system? I think we should collect it. They turned to find Lady Shaltir coming over from the entrance to her court with Leanne and 2 vampire brides. Collect it, my lady? Clara said, do you mean to say that we should store it for when it's required? To water the gardens and such? No, Lady Shaltir replied. I'm saying that we should sell it. But it's water, Leanne frowned. Water isn't a valuable commodity in our region. It's not just any water, Lady Shaltir told her. It's water that the ladies of my court have bathed in. A first-class product. We even have 3 merchants. You can market it yourself. Lady Aura's hand clamped straight onto Lady Shaltier's face with a loud smack. Is it this mouth? Lady Aura scowled. Is it this stupid mouth saying stupid things? Muffled noises rose from Lady Shaltier as she struggled to remove the hand pressing against her face. She could have stepped back to get away from the dark elf's hand, but stubbornly insisted on trying to pull the hand off. Ludmilla eyed the interaction thoughtfully. Lady Shaltier was supposed to have a freedom effect active, but it wasn't working against Lady Aura's hand. Was there some trick to it? Lady Aura turned to them. Remember, you 4 are this idiot's courtiers now, so make sure she doesn't do any dumb or crazy stuff. How dare you? Lady Shaltier finally threw off Lady Aura's hand. Those are my vassals, why you can't just order them around? Is that so? Lady Aura raised an eyebrow. Who was it that put me in charge of a certain pair of dummies? NGKH. Teeth clenched, Lady Shaltier glared sullenly at Lady Aura. The dark elf girl turned back to address them. And that's how it is. I can't be around all the time to keep an eye on this idiot, and Shaltier's other vassals always do their best to follow her orders. But you 4 are different, make sure you take good care of her. We'll do our best to serve her, Lady Aura. Ludmilla lowered her head. Lady Aura planted her hands on her hips and nodded. Ludmilla's been doing a good job so far, so just ask her about the details. Are you done here, Mayor? I have to see how the sun will affect the position of all these plants. I'll come back to do that tomorrow. Just a second, Leanne said. You said 2 dummies. Who's the other one? Albedo, Lady Aura replied. With that, Lady Aura and Lord Mayor hopped into one of the potted trees. Lady Shaltier sighed, her crimson gaze downcast. I want my dignity back. Ludmilla went over to Lady Shaltier, gently stroking her back. It will be fine, my lady. No matter what, you're still our liege. But they know I'm stupid now, Lady Shaltier sniffed. Clara, Leanne and Florine exchanged looks, then burst out into laughter. We've been helping you with so many different things, Clara said. There's no way we wouldn't have noticed. So she's been keeping up appearances thinking we didn't know. Leanne wiped a tear from her right eye. She really is a dummy. See? Lady Shaltier pointed. This is a real-life charisma break. Ha, I'll never recover from this. Florine came over to stand on the other side of Lady Shaltier, placing a hand on her shoulder. Ludmilla is right, my lady, she said, it will be fine. Perhaps you feel inadequate because there are so many excellent people in His Majesty's service, but that doesn't matter to us. Lady Shaltier looked up at Florine. It doesn't? How should I put it? As nobles, our choices are generally limited. Sometimes we're born in a generation where we have an excellent liege. Sometimes, it's the opposite. Usually, they're just normal. Our vassals, too, are the same way. One of our tenants might possess prodigious talent, but his son might end up as an indulgent wastrel. Either way, their household is still under our care and we just have to make things work. As noble women, Florine continued, we might have been married off to someone incompetent and spent the rest of our lives desperately trying to make sure their household didn't fall apart. Or our husbands might not have even recognized us for our capabilities and we'd be forced to watch our new household destroy itself while being tasked to raise children that would inherit that mess. A lord might wish for better vassals, or vassals might wish for a better lord, but the fact is that we were all brought up knowing that the world isn't some perfect chain of perfect relationships with perfect people. So you wouldn't rather work under, say, Albedo than me? There would be certain advantages to working under Lady Albedo, Florine replied, but, in the end, I think I would rather serve as your vassal rather than hers. But why? You said that vassals might wish for a better lord, and Albedo is so much better than I am at this stuff. She isn't. Lady Shaltier looked uncomprehendingly at Florine. She isn't, Florine smiled. Lady Albedo is an excellent administrator. Her judgment is peerless when it comes to the application of His Majesty's laws and organizing the realm. In a word, she's functional and we all admire her greatly for that. Being a leader, however, is not simply about being functional. People aren't numbers or mechanisms that one can activate and expect to perform according to specifications that generate productivity and balance satisfaction. People and nations have a soul. You, my lady, tend to breathe life into the parts of the world that you touch. If Lady Albedo had her way, I think the Sorceress Kingdom would be a sterile and dreary place. Besides, you're not genuinely stupid. You have things you're good at too. What if I told you that, if I had my way, the entire world would be a paradise for the undead? Then I suppose we would all be undead, Florine replied. But it would still have more spirit than whatever Lady Albedo could devise. Their liege's gaze turned away from Florine, moving from Clara to Liane, who smiled and nodded. After a moment, she released a quiet breath. In that case, she said, I'll be relying on you girls for many things. Vassals do not exist without purpose, my lady, Ludmilla said. Nobles are raised because they are needed by their liege. It doesn't matter that you don't possess unfathomable intellect or peerless talent and capability. It is our joy to be of service to you and His Majesty, and it is an honor to be entrusted with duty. Don't you feel the same way about your service to the Sorcerer King? Of course. Then it shouldn't be so strange, yes? What you've been doing all this time is already more than we could ever have hoped for in the past, and I believe that things will only get better with all of us together now. Ludmilla produced an empty decanter from an infinite haversack. We should take care of this before we have to leave, she said. Did Lady Pestonia deliver the one from the other day, by the way? Oh, yes, thank you for that. The place Albedo sent me to is so arid. Having a glass of fresh blood after a hard day's work really hits the spot. I brought decanters for the others, as well, Ludmilla said. Excellent, Lady Shiltir brightened. He, I've been waiting for this. Let's go back inside and fill them up. Lady Shiltir turned and headed back to her court. Ludmilla fell in line behind her, followed by Clara, Liane, and Florine. Did she say blood? Yes, Liane. I've told you about this, haven't I? Does it hurt? Not much. Lady Shiltir is an expert at drawing blood, so you're in good hands. By the way, Lady Shiltir said. If I'd like more than blood, that would be fine as well, yes? We are at your service, my lady, Ludmilla replied. Then, Florine? Yes, my lady? About the side story with Grand Duchess Chasha and the High Emperor that I wanted to commission. No. Or,